Yes, what is the story? Welcome back to another episode of the FPL Draft Mode podcast. It is myself, Nolezy. I am back after my hiatus last week. We are going through trades, this or that, waivers, dilemmas, the whole lot. But the overriding quote, the other overriding idea of this week's podcast is going to be this quote above me here. The best players from the best teams. We're focusing on the top teams and the top players. That's simple, and hopefully they will get us points. Other than that, let's get into it. Jacksies stats section, as always, we're looking at XG and XA for the next couple of slides. First, we're looking at overperforming expected goals, and top of the list here we have Danny Welbeck. He's banged 7 goals. He has had 4.55 XG, so a difference of 2.45. I said a couple of weeks ago that maybe you should look to trade out Danny Welbeck. I didn't think you could keep this going, and he has. My question is, can he keep it going? Based on this XG, he is one of the best strikers in the league in terms of finishing. So maybe he can, maybe he can't. This might be just an indication that he might eventually slow down. Haaland, as always, proven that he's a good finisher. 2.28 above his expected goals. Let's have a look at some of the other top players that are overperforming. Jackson, Salah, Watkins, Havertz. All top players, and I don't think I'd look into this too much because we obviously know that they're good finishers. Palmer, Mbeumo, Wissa, Johnson, proving to be a good finisher. So not too many surprises in here. The first surprise I see is Jorginho Rutter, who, again, it's not crazy difference, but 1.43 XG with 2 goals. He's a player that we'll definitely talk about in today's episode. Szoboszlai, Trossard, Archer, but at a very, very small difference to their actual output. So unless it's a major difference, I don't think we should look into it too much. But yes, some of the top players proven that they're good finishers. More importantly, we are looking at underperforming stats here in terms of goals. And again, the overriding thing is that the difference between their actual output and their XG is not massive. It ranges from like 0.15 all the way to 0.4, which, like, that's them statistical anomalies, we call them. Statistical differences are to be expected. So again, nothing to look into major here, but some of the players that are slightly underperforming, top of the list, Duran, which is kind of strange. I've been looking at Duran's numbers recently, his returns, and although he is a very good second striker, and we talked about that before, what you get with him is either a 1 or maybe a 6. His ceiling's pretty low because he's only a certain amount of time. So is he really that good? And are you really going to start him? He's also slightly underperforming as well, so which maybe doesn't make for a good recipe. Kulusevski only banged 1 goal, 1.37 XG, nothing major there. Raul Jimenez slightly underperformed, but very, very close. There's no major standout players here. Madison, Mitoma, players that I expect to push on in terms of goals soon. Cunha, 2.19 to 2 returns. Again, I'd expect over the next couple of weeks that Cunha, absolutely smashes it and would definitely be a player that I'd be targeting. But Anante has 1 or 2 more good fixtures, and Carvalho only banged the 1 goal. So no major standout underperformers here that we should really be targeting and having our eye on. But some players that, like, let's say Mitoma, I think is going slightly under the radar, and hopefully not only will he get more returns, but actually increase that XG as well. Looking at some overperforming expected assists here, and first and foremost, we'll start off with our top players. Saka, 7 assists, Salah, 5 assists, Palmer, 5 assists. They all have relatively low expected assists, but they're playing for very good teams. So we'll come back to that idea. Sancho and Ndidi are the biggest outliers, I suppose. Both 4 assists with not even 1 expected assist racked up. Other players that have 4 assists, Madison and Antonio. Antonio well underperforming or overperforming his stats, and Madison very in line. So again, going forward, we're looking at Madison to continue that, Antonio on a let's say a good run of form. And the rest of the players, 3 assists, Rutter, Bowen, Bernardo, Young, Savio, Mitoma, Damsgaard, Tillemans, Digne, and Lewis Potter. So majority of them are relatively in line. Young majorly overperforming. The rest aren't too far away. The likes of Mitoma and Damsgaard are overperforming Bernardo nearly doubling. So that's a good indication that they will continue to perform. Now, if we go back to the idea of good players, good teams, the reason I say this is because even if you look at some players here that play for poorer sides, right? They might have good expected assists, or players you might be looking up and they have good expected assists. They might have 1.73 expected assists with no assists. But players that overperform might be playing on very good teams, and a lot of them are. Okay, what I mean, or an example of that could be a Gravenberch. A Gravenberch could pass the ball to Salah. He could run the pitch, bang it top corner. That's an FPL assist, and there has been a crazy amount of talk about what's an FPL assist, how they have given it, and so on and so forth this week. So just keep that in mind, that if you're playing with a good team, you're a 90-minute man, right? Playing with the likes of a Palmer or a Haaland, all they need is a pass. All they need is the last touch on the ball. So sometimes over-analysing the XG, which I have done in the past, mightn't be the most efficient way. I look at our underperforming expected assists, and top of the list is Dwight McNeil. Slightly underperforming, 3 assists with a 3.36 expected assists, which is in line and actually is a good stat to have racked up after 9 game weeks for an Everton side that struggled to get off the mark. But other players, let's go through them. They all have 1 assist. Foden, Grealish, Rashford, Hall, Kulusevski, De Bruyne, Doku, Semenyo, Trent, Eze, Andres, Iwobi and Raul Jimenez. Now, for the most part, they are fairly close to their expected assists. The biggest anomaly is Trent, 2.28. After a couple of game weeks, he had most of that built up. So if he can continue doing what he's doing, he will get them returns. But if you've had him, you've probably been unfortunate not to gather up some more points. The next biggest ones are De Bruyne, 2.17 versus the 1 assist. We'll talk about him later on. The next biggest ones, Foden, so all the City boys, maybe that's Haaland missing chances if you had him triple captain. And yeah, the rest, Iwobi, 1.18. They're not too far away. They're within the 0.3, and again, that's absolutely fine. That's normal. Maybe the biggest thing from this is the likes of Rashford, Grealish, Kulusevski, Semenyo, even Andres and Eze only having 1 assist so far. So irrelevant of the stats, maybe it's the outcomes that is the biggest anomaly here. And a quick look at teams with the most clean sheets and most goals. Liverpool on top with 5. Somehow United are second with 4. Arsenal, Brighton and Forest are joint with 3. And then Chelsea, Palace and City all have 2. Pretty disappointing from some teams such as Arsenal and City, but yeah, maybe that will change in the future. Looking at teams with the most goals, City on top, 20. Chelsea banging them in, 19. Brentford, 16. Spurs, 16. Arsenal, 17. Liverpool, 17. Villa, 16. And Brighton, also 16. So, again, when we think about clean sheets, when we think about goals, best teams, best players. I have been a whore for it this week, or this year, picking players with great fixtures but bad underlying stats just because the fixture is good. When I go through all of these dilemmas, this or that, watch list, all that sort of stuff, best players, best teams, and using this information to caveat, we should be able to get returns in the future. On to our common dilemmas, and thank you as always for sending in all the questions. There's too many to get to. If we don't answer them on this, we'll try and get to them on Instagram. But let's look at some of the players that people asked about specifically. Trippier is our first one. Now, the person asked, should I get Trippier in now slightly early, kind of under the radar type thing? For me, he's out for another 2 weeks. I have that in green for some reason. That should be red. He's out for another 2 weeks. So when he comes back, they do have some nice fixtures. They're pretty okay. But Livramento is playing right back. Now, I'm not saying Livramento is nailed, but if we think about picking up a player that's injury prone, that has been in and out of the squad, Newcastle haven't been amazing at the back, and he's not nailed, I think that's a bit of a reach. So I'd be putting Trippier off for a week or two, definitely. Next one up is Sancho. Now, with Sancho, what do we think? I think he's a decent option. They have some serious fixtures from game week 12. but he is a rotation risk. Neto played extremely well the last day and, could be in there to start another couple of games. Now, he will probably, I was going to say definitely, start game week 10. That is because Sancho can't play against United. So you're going to have to wait at least 3 weeks. And why I say that is because after that they play Arsenal. Probably don't want to play him against Arsenal. Now, although Chelsea do score goals, second most goals, so could be done. But he's a rotation risk from game week 12 onwards. If you think he's worth having for them like 10 games in a row as a possible rotation risk, that's fair enough. But really, really overperforming in terms of his XA, as we saw, and didn't have the most amazing games recently. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a split decision. I'd personally be going towards Neto in my opinion. Konza's here, but the question was, what should we do with Villa defenders? And if we're looking at Villa, fixtures are very, very tough. Trading, they don't have a huge amount of trade value. If you hold on to them and in a couple of weeks' time, they don't have a massive trade value. And they're playing in Europe. They have a lot of games coming up. So for me, I'm not too arsed about Villa defenders. I'd let them go. If I find a good player that has a good run of fixtures with a decent side, there's no Villa defender there that, is a must-have that you need to hold for a couple of games that you can't get back. Next up is our first tick, Darwin Núñez. And someone said, is it worth holding on to him? Definitely. With Darwin, Jota's out until, I think, after the international break. So guaranteed minutes, right? Whether he starts or comes on, he'll have a nice chunk of minutes. High upside, good side, score a lot of goals, and their fixtures are pretty good. So yeah, if you have Darwin, or maybe you're looking to get Darwin in, good option for the next 4 or 5 game weeks. Kudos, and a lot of people asked about Kudos and Kudos replacements. Now, when we go through the midfielders, I think the thing you have to think about is any of them good enough to replace Kudos full time. For me, Kudos is one of those that will be hard to get back on the waiver after you have let him off, just like the Konza one. So with the Konza one, like, he can be replaced. He's not going to be someone's number one waiver, but Kudos might be. Kudos, although, didn't have the most amazing season, he was just getting going. Very versatile, as I've written down here, and I have starter. Because Somerville played very well, I don't know if he's nailed anymore, but I would like to say he is. But I've put down starter instead. Now, he's out until game week 12, so yes, people might want to replace him, but if you can, or I suppose if you don't see a player on today's episode that's available that you think is better than Kudos, fine. But I think once you get rid of him, it will be hard to get him back. And again, one thing that I found is that when you get rid of a player, rid of a starting decent player, and you have to get them waiver players in, it is tough to replace them long term. And then Semedo, or this is a substitute for any Wolves defender, should you keep them? Yes, they have had a poor defence so far. They haven't kept a clean sheet, but we have them unbelievable run of fixtures coming. I have Dawson down here because if it's not Semedo or Aït-Nouri, the only other one I go for is Dawson. Totti has been in and out of the team. Bueno's been in and out there, so I wouldn't be picking up one, especially when they don't have amazing underlying stats. All they have is fixtures, and you're not nailed. So Semedo, Aït-Nouri or Dawson will be my picks for the Wolves players. On to a little game of this or that before we hit on to our waivers. And we start off with the notorious injured fullbacks. Reece James versus Luke Shaw. One of them has already got injured. I picked up Luke Shaw in hope that he'd come back and change United, and picking him up lost me the game. I left off John Stones. John Stones scored. Luke Shaw is injured again. So it's a very, very easy decision. Reece James gets the nod. Played 90 minutes the last day. Played left back, kind of, I wouldn't say inverted. Came slightly inside, but yeah. I'd be picking Reece James. Chelsea have an insane run of fixtures. Hopefully he can stay fit. Luke Shaw's already proven that he can't. This one I really liked because this one is... This can only happen in the draft. KDB or Semenyo. And when I looked at this initially, I don't think I've even made my decision yet, but when I looked at this initially, I laughed. I was like, of course KDB. But apparently it's after the international break. It's unknown on FPL. Thing with this is And this is how you have to look at trades. You have to take pricing out of it. You have to take the idea of what you have regarding the player out of your head. So if it's another 4 or 5 game weeks until KDB, minimum 4 or 5, gets in there consistently, Semenyo has an extra 4 or 5 games on top of him. Now, Semenyo, unless he gets injured, got slightly injured last season, but no injury history like KDB has, Semenyo will play 90 minutes every day. So he already has the advantage of having extra minutes. KDB is injured, injury prone, and not guaranteed to play 90 minutes every day. I can't believe I'm kind of going towards this, but I think I might be picking Semenyo as a safer, higher reward pick, but he's not. KDB only needs a couple of games and a run of games to win you a draft. But if you're thinking, and I heard this on a podcast, I think it was FPL General, we want points now. And I know in the draft sometimes you got to play the long game, but how long can you play? Especially in the draft, we can't hold on to players. KDB for 4 or 5 weeks will take up a spot and make you change your team around. So I am actually leaning towards taking a Semenyo over a KDB. That could be draft history. Next up, I think these two players are always put against each other. In start of the season in terms of draft rank, trades, Bruno and Odegaard, and who are you taking? Odegaard is back sooner than we expect. Could be next week, could be the week after. Let's say it's 2 weeks time in game week 12, he plays 90 minutes. Bruno Fernandes plays 90 minutes every day, we know that. Big changes in the United camp. Apparently, your man, I don't actually know how to pronounce it, Amorin or something, whatever his name is, sets up with a 3-4-3, kind of, I wouldn't say 2 10s, but 2 cams, we'll call them. That might suit Bruno. It depends on the pressing situation and how rigid that is. I know it can be fluent by the videos I've watched, but I'm kind of, maybe I'm wrong. I was going to say I'm geared towards a Bruno revival under the new manager. But Odegaard could do the exact same thing. They need, they need that leader. Arsenal need that leader, and I think Odegaard is the man. So I might be wearing my United hat, but I can see Bruno's numbers getting a lot better. And Odegaard's numbers, even when fit previously, weren't amazing. So I'm actually going to lean towards Bruno here with the high upside, new manager, and penalties obviously as well. Then finally, Gusto versus Pinnock. Back to our original quote, best players, best teams. And I've literally just looked back up at KDB and Semenyo, and I've went Semenyo over KDB. Could be mental. But Gusto, better team. Looks like he's going to play possibly right back. Brentford haven't keeping a clean sheet. So fairly simple on that one. Gusto over Pinnock for me. A quick review of a watch list. It's not much of a watch list here, but something that I think we should keep doing and keep updating. Players that we want to look at, identify for this week and next week, how they'll be in the future. Top of the list, Tsimikas. Robbo playing very poorly, getting done by Saka. Now anyone can get done by Saka, but it hasn't been the same this season. Could we see Tsimikas get in there? He did start tonight's EFL game, so maybe that just indicates Robbo's number one and always will be, but something to keep our eye on. Hurst, goal and an assist at the weekend. Didn't start, but maybe might be in line with a start. More on him in the waiver section. And Nunez, positive comments from Pep on him. Banged the goal at the weekend, started, but I think that was his first start of the year. And Gundo's benching essentially led to him starting, with Doku and Grealish not featuring much with injuries. Could we see more of Nunez? What positions is he going to pick up? Always good for a goal and assist when he plays, if he does, but some players to keep our eye on going on to our defenders section, and I have them all put in one slide here. We have our top tier defenders, or probably smaller size leagues, but I'd probably put them in this order anyways. And then we have our, I suppose, more punty ones, larger size leagues. We'll start off with our top defenders, and the top defender I have is Timber. This is mainly down to Arsenal's injuries. I know they haven't been amazing at the back, but if we look at Arsenal's fixtures, Newcastle away, Chelsea away, 2 tough ones. That's okay. Then they have Forest, West Ham, United and Fulham. So Depending on the extent of, let's say, Gabriel's injury, which is apparently a couple of weeks' time, Timber could be in there. I think Timber will start regardless because Calafiori apparently is out for a good number of weeks. So to me, it might be Timber at left back there for the next 4 or 5 weeks. Best teams, best players. I'm going Julian Timber over Reece James. Although now that I say that, James has the long-term fixtures. If we look at Chelsea's fixtures over the long term, I have down here to game week 15, but let's extend that all the way to game week 22. Chelsea go from well down the bottom to well up the top. They play United and Arsenal, again 2 tough fixtures just like Timber has. After that, Leicester, Villa, Southampton, Spurs, Brentford, Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, Palace, Bournemouth and Wolves. No top side apart from Spurs. And Villa until game week 22. So you have Reece James there, unless he gets injured, for a good chunk of it. So I think it's more of the risk versus reward. Will he get injured, and how will he play under Maresca is the big question. I'd probably go with my solid defender, better defense, but James a very close second, and then Dalot. Dalot again, apparently wing backs are a big feature of new managers' tactics, and Dalot could be exploited very well in terms of FPL in this regard. United long-term fixtures are very good as well. Chelsea next week, but after that, Leicester, Ipswich, Everton, Arsenal, Forest and City. You got 2 tough ones in there. Bournemouth, Wolves, Newcastle. So over the next 10, we have maybe 3 to 4 very tough fixtures. The rest are manageable. And I was going to say, he is good at scoring, but we saw the chance the last day that he absolutely fluffed. So Timber, James and Dalot, top teams, decent defenses. Can't go wrong. On to our kind of more punchy ones. I've Brathwaite up the top. Maybe I shouldn't, but Everton has some decent fixtures, and hopefully he will be back in that side. Could be Tarkowski that gets the chop. Michael Keane has played very well. If one of them has to go, could be Tarkowski. Hasn't missed a game since he signed, but yeah, hasn't been playing amazing lately, and Michael Keane has. But I expect Brathwaite, maybe not next week. Played 4 minutes in game week 9. I expect him to come back in there regardless. He's the number 1 defender. No question about that. Everton's fixtures, Everton. Where are we? Everton. There we go. Southampton, game week 10. West Ham, Brentford. 3 fixtures that could go anyway. West Ham haven't been amazing. Brentford very good at scoring. United, Wolves, Liverpool, Arsenal. So in the short term, okay. In the long term, not amazing. We might caveat that when we look at Chalaba's fixtures. So for the next 3, hoping and providing that he starts, Brathwaite, decent option. Chalaba, second in line. The reason I went Chalaba and not Munoz and Mitchell is because Chalaba has racked up a serious amount of bonus points compared to the 2 boys. I think he had like 47 versus the other boys at like 25, 27. So a lot more. If they keep a clean sheet, due to his statistics, he could be on for the bonus points. Palace have not been good at the back, and again, that's why they're down the punts. But they play Wolves, Fulham, Villa, Newcastle, Ipswich. 3 fixtures, maybe you can start him in, and he looks like he's going to be starting centre-back for Palace over them 5 fixtures. So maybe 3 that you want to take advantage of. They did get a clean sheet the last day, so maybe that's the sign of something new. And then our Brentford boys, Pinnock could be substituted with Collins or whoever, but Pinnock, Brentford's fixtures are decent, but they are yet to keep a clean sheet. So, again, we can't trust them. Fulham away, good side. Bournemouth at home, good side. Everton away, can score. And then Leicester at home. If I'm playing statistics, they're going well. And they will probably keep their first clean sheet in one of those 4 games. If I'm going by past experiences, what's the point of picking him up? Because they just can't keep clean sheets. But he has banged 2 goals. So Pinnock, Collins, both have very good aerial threat. Brentford up there with some of the top teams to score goals. So, even if you don't get them clean sheets, hopefully you get some returns in some way. our midfielder section now, and we are starting with our top tier midfielders. Maybe taken, but if not, definitely wants a target. Top of that list is Semenyo. We talked about him so often earlier on with the KDB discussion. He has, I think it's the second or third most shots still in the Premier League. I remember after like 4 or 5 game weeks, that was the stat. And I said, well, he can't keep that up. Boom, he's still there. So if you want to target Semenyo in a trade, his value decreased because of his tough fixtures, but I still think that he is the man to target. His numbers are brilliant. Bournemouth continue to play well. But he is kind of going against my initial quote because Brennan Johnson plays for a better side in terms of attack, in terms of structure, and in terms of players that he plays with. Brennan Johnson looks to be 100% nailed for the next couple of weeks. Odebert has picked up an injury that will keep him out. So I know Johnson seemed like he's nailed because of his performances, but he is definitely nailed now. I put him just ahead of Neto, obviously because of that nailedness. Neto played very well the last day. Super option and probably one of the best options from the waivers for long term. Always fighting with Sancho, but I don't think he's much of a challenge for anyone else. I think it's kind of set now. We have Madueke right wing. We have Palmer number 10, obviously. Neto and Sancho fighting for that left wing spot, and Jackson up top. Yes, there will be some rotation, but I think that is the best Chelsea side, the most probable Chelsea side. So when he's only fighting with one person, not too bad. I'd be happy enough to take a chance on him. But obviously, our Semenyo and our Johnson are better options long term. And then our kind of more punchy ones. Rutter, I think it's 5 returns in the last 4 games. Super form. Brilliant underlying stats. Great man to target. Brighton a good side and looks to be preferred to Minte full time now. Very close is Tavernier, and although he didn't start the last day, came on, got an assist. His dead balls are unbelievable. I had them on level par, but I think Rutter is probably the best option. But Tavernier should be nailed. It was the first game he didn't start this season. He kind of notoriously racks up expected assists and goals and never gets anything. But very solid player. Bournemouth have some good fixtures. Let's look at the Bournemouth fixtures very quickly before I move on. Bournemouth, they play City. Okay, fair enough. You're getting them in and you're probably benching them. Brentford, Brighton, Wolves, Spurs, Ipswich, West Ham. All games that Bournemouth could score in. They could score against City. They're a really good counter-attacking side. And they have looked solid this year. So, again, Rutter probably plays the better team. Easy to go there. But if we're not looking for either of those two, Damsgaard of Brentford has been producing a good few returns this season as well. Although his expected involvements isn't massive, playing in kind of a number 10 role. Brentford don't usually play with that, but as much of a number 10 role as Brentford could ever play with. Again, we looked at the fixtures as we talked about. Pinnock, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton and Leicester. Really good fixtures for returns. After that, they do have some tough fixtures in Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea. So I'd call it a short term, but you know, Brentford are really attacking side. You could have him for the next 7 or 8 games. So, you know, if you wanted to go even more solid, Damsgaard could be even a better option than Tavernier. 3 really good options if you're in a larger size league, and then some players to target if you're in a smaller size league. And then finally on to our forward options. It seems like, again, we have that kind of a stage in the season where a couple of them are coming to the forefront. Top of the list, Darwin Núñez. He does start for Liverpool tonight, but so does Mo Salah, so do a lot of the big players. I talked about it earlier in the dilemmas, I think it was. You know, he should be a shoo-in, should be, for the next 4 or 5 games for one of the top sides in the Premier League. Kind of a no-brainer if he's on the waiver, or let's say if you're indecisive of keeping him. Now, a bit more shrewd could be a trade. Very hard to do when you know a player is going to play, but his value could be really high right now. Maybe after next week, if he bangs, that's one less fixture that Jota misses out, and it's, you know, Darwin's value go up. Again, fast forward 10-15 game weeks, if Darwin's not in there, getting in there consistently, you could have traded maybe a Darwin for Raul Jimenez, and Raul Jimenez is consistently playing. So I think you're in a good position if you have Darwin regardless. Second up is Njai of Everton, and although he's been playing left wing, he's been playing really well, and he looks like he's officially nailed down that spot for Everton. One statistic I saw about him is that he's racking up serious bonus points for forwards per 90. For the kind of lower level forwards, he's racking up some really, really good bonus points. So 1 or 2 returns and he could be on for a nice, 8, 9, 10 point haul. And Everton has some good fixtures and they're becoming a better side. And again, I'm staying with that quote at the start. Archer's next. Probably could put Ferguson there, but Archer looks like he's going to be nailed. So if you're nailed, you're better than someone who's from a good team that's not nailed. So Archer has to be third on the list because he looks like he's nailed, but he's playing for Southampton. 2 goals in 2 games. Again, form, starting. What more do you want? Apologies that I wasn't here last week because definitely would have been a player that we'd be picking out. Hopefully it's not too late. And then Ferguson. Yes, he came on and banged, but Welbeck continues to bang. So I don't think I see Ferguson getting in there consistently. I think the thing you have to pray for if you have Ferguson is a Welbeck injury, because the way Welbeck is playing, he's not going to get pushed out by Ferguson. And then finally, Hurst, bottom of the list because he plays for Ipswich and he's not officially nailed yet, but looks like he will start this game week. So if you're looking for a playing striker for next game week, I think they have an easy fixture. I think it could be Southampton actually. Hurst is the man. Hurst could be a nice little punt and he could be a route into a player that starts. Now, I don't see him, pushing out the lap, obviously, but if they change formation and it works for them, that could be positive. So a couple of strikers that you might be able to get off the waiver, and hopefully they do good in game week 10. That is us. FPL Draft Duo game week 10 done and dusted. Thank you as always for any support or interaction on any platform. Any questions that we haven't answered, hopefully we'll get to on Instagram. Other than that, FPL Draft Duo out. Boom.